Good morning, everybody. Today we are going to be concluding our first segment of Luther's Catechisms as we wrap up the commandments. So today we're looking at the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th commandments. So without looking at your resources there, let's see if we can name them. What's the 7th commandment? Okay, no stealing. 8th commandment? False witness. All right, so we'll get into that one. Okay. 9th commandment. All right, then what's the 10th commandment? So 9th commandment, don't covet stuff. 10th commandment, don't covet living stuff. So we'll get through that here in a minute. So let's open with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your commandments, those guides you have given us to show how you have woven your law into creation. We pray that you would guide us as people called in Christ, that we might live according to your design for the good of us and for our neighbor. In Jesus' name, amen. Let's take a look at the opening worship under session 4 on the worksheet there from Psalm 71. In you, O Lord, I take refuge. Let me never be put to shame. Be to me a rock of refuge to which I may continually come. For you, O Lord, are my hope, my trust, O Lord, from my youth. All right, so today we are going to be not following exactly with the stuff that's here in the study guide. So some of these are better than others, I've found. So we're going to go through all the commandments, the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th commandments from the small and large catechisms, but maybe doing a couple little different things here. So as we launch into our conversation, I want you to think about this. How significant is stuff in our world today, in our culture? Very significant, right? Very significant. Okay. How significant is reputation in our culture today? What people think of you? 20%. Oh, there's this little thing called social media. Everybody wants the likes. So there's the stuff, there's the material, but then there's also the immaterial, the social currency that is very much a part of how we go through life, at least in our culture around us today. So as we get into the 7th, 8th, and 9th, and 10th commandments, keep those things in mind, all right? So we're going to be exploring this. So let's take a look here, because these are all, really, if you think about it, they're all about relating to our neighbor. Because where do you get stuff? I mean, unless you're Bob, you don't make it yourself, right? Not building it all. So you have to go, you have to get it, you have to have relations, we have income, currency, all these things, and then going out into the world, you relate to your neighbor, to the people around you. So let's take a look. Small Catechism, 7th commandment: you shall not steal. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we may not take our neighbor's money or property, nor get them with bad products or deals, but help him to improve and protect his property and business. The 8th commandment: you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we may not deceitfully belie, betray, slander, or defame our neighbor, but defend him, think and speak well of him, and put the best construction on everything. The 9th commandment: you shall not covet your neighbor's house. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we may not craftily seek to get our neighbor's inheritance or house, or obtain it by a show of justice and right, or any other means, but help and be of service to him in keeping it. 10th commandment: you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his cattle, or anything that is his. We should fear and love God so that we may not turn, force, or entice away our neighbor's wife, servants, or cattle, but urge them to stay and carefully do their duty. Okay, that's the small catechism, large catechism. Seventh commandment. God has commanded that no one shall take away from or diminish his neighbor's possessions. For to steal is nothing else than to get possession of another's property wrongfully. Briefly, this includes all kinds of advantage and all sorts of trade to the disadvantage of our neighbor. Therefore, let everyone know his duty at the risk of God's displeasure. He must do no harm to his neighbor, nor deprive him of profit, nor commit any act of unfaithfulness or hatred in any bargain or trade. But he must also faithfully preserve his property for him, secure and promote his advantage. This is especially true when one accepts money, wages, and one's livelihood for such service. Eighth commandment. Therefore, God does not want the reputation, good name, and upright character of our neighbor to be taken away or diminished, just as with his money and possessions. He wants everyone to stand in his integrity before wife, children, servants, and neighbors. In the first place, we must consider the plainest meaning of this commandment according to the words, "You shall not bear false witness." This applies to the public courts of justice, where a poor innocent man is accused and oppressed by false witness in order to be punished in his body, property, or honor. Therefore, this commandment is given in the first place so that everyone shall help his neighbor to secure his rights. Next, this commandment extends very much farther if we are to apply it to spiritual jurisdiction and administration. Here it is a common occurrence that everyone bears false witness against his neighbor. In the third place, which concerns us all, the commandment forbids all sins of the tongue by which we may injure or confront our neighbor. Ninth and 10th commandments. Therefore, God has added these two commandments in order that it be considered sinful and forbidden to desire or in any way aim at getting our neighbor's wife or possessions. Here it is also forbidden for you to alienate anything from your neighbor, even though you could do so with honor in the eyes of the world, so that no one could accuse or blame you as though he had gotten it wrongfully. We must know that God does not want you to deprive your neighbor of anything that belongs to him, so that he suffer the loss and you gratify your greed with it. This is true even if you could keep it honorably before the world. Okay, there's a lot of stuff going on here, right? So, seventh commandment, we said it's about not doing what? Stealing. And how is Luther defining stealing? If you wanted to kind of take a minute at your table, see if you can come up with a definition that we can use that kind of covers the things that are being addressed here. What is stealing? All right, let's come back together here. So okay, so we're entering into this with the question of what is stealing? What does this mean? So if we say we should not steal, what does this mean? So who wants to go first here? Don't take okay, so don't take something that's not yours. Okay. Oh no. Oh no. Yeah. Like, and they fit. So that's impressive there too. Yeah. It's like, why is this kid wearing these size 13 shoes? Yet, ah, okay, okay. So it's not just the taking like a thing. It's also maybe doing something that's either unfair or selfish, right? You're depriving someone else of something for your benefit. Okay, yeah. So there's those two different things, right? I don't know if that's coercion as so much as just enticing. Oh, coercion and enticement. We can have a long conversation, Bob. Okay, but no, you're so there's there. So it's not even necessarily the but it's like the pressure or things that you're trying to stage things in your favor, right? Okay. How about you guys? Back table. Unjust enrichment. Oh, okay. I now you got a question. Okay. Okay. Uh huh. Uh huh. Well, we'll come back to that one. Yeah, we'll hang on to that. We'll come back to that one. Did you guys over here? Did you have? Is your answer what they said? Is it nothing? Ditto. All right. The back table. Okay, so in your interaction with them, you don't have the malice, you don't have the ill intention, like because those things are one seeking to harm the other, and possibly to your advantage. Okay, for you all. Okay, okay, okay. So in a consumerist society, capitalist society, there is uh, a mandate to get what you can, regardless of how it impacts others. You can well, Luther's saying that here, right? Even if it's in the eyes of the world, it's acceptable. It's like, well, you didn't do anything wrong. It's like you still can be at fault. Yeah, yeah. Well, so there's a difference, right? There's a difference in doing something for free or doing something at the fair value, right? And then Todd had something over here. I wanted to make sure we talked about. So yeah.
choose their own options. It gets we have to struggling with when is that line crossed.
So if you're, well, we were talking about, so like with, I don't know, principals that you need to get or called workers.
To another Lutheran school, I'd really rather not lose, and it's something where I can't say no, but it's tougher.
Yeah, Alexander. Well, loyalty, okay. And that's the individual, right? The loyalty is not necessarily on the part of the institution. So let's thinking about this as we're looking at what we're talking about here in the seventh commandment and stealing and all these. Now we're seeing, oh, this applies to a lot more maybe than we initially thought it did. So as we're thinking about this, even though we live in a culture, a climate, or let's say you're in an industry where there's an expected norm that, yeah, you're going to do what you can to get somebody else's client, right? So that, well, because you're going to be able to do it better. What's wrong with that? You're not doing anything underhanded necessarily. There are people that do underhanded things for sure. But even if you're doing everything, even if you're playing by the rules, that doesn't mean that the rules or even the whole system is right. So as we go through the world, we need to be thinking about, okay, well, what can we be doing? And we'll see as we get down into the 10th commandment there about, what does it mean to maybe foster loyalty, even if it's not somebody that's your employee. So how do we as Christians, how do we support one another? How do we encourage? How do we as Christians living in a world that is broken, how do we mirror the life that God would have us do, even if maybe that costs us? So that maybe you refrain from poaching the star forward from that team because you're like, no, they've built good relationships there. You don't look at it as a competition between all the teams in the sense of we're talking about like the meta game, because if everybody gets all the good players, Pastor Richard, do you know any teams like that ever? I don't know. How does that affect it? So you need to think about more than just yourself. So in the seventh commandment, we are being called to reflect on the good of others beyond our own, not just depriving others from what they have, but also seeking to protect and care for them. There's always this flip side with the commandments too, and the good things that come along with it. Okay. Any other questions on that for seventh commandment? What's immoral? What? Yeah, God has woven these things. We had our confirmation module on the commandments just this week, and we were talking about this. But if you think about this, the commandments, these are things that are woven into creation. So if you was before God gave Moses these tablets at Mount Sinai and everything like that, was stealing wrong? Yes, this is not a trick question, right? Or in cultures that, let's say, had never heard of the 10 Commandments, is stealing wrong? It's still wrong. So all these things in the 10 Commandments, these are all woven into the fabric of creation. It's not a thing that's uniquely Christian or of any particular time or place. This is just how God has designed the world to work. Okay, so now, eighth commandment. So as we get into this, we talk about not doing what? What's the short version of the eighth commandment? Don't bear false witness, right? So it's not just lying, but there's something more to it too. So it's lying that also is to hurt someone else or to defame someone else. And as we talk through, as we go through the commandments too, we see that in each of the commandments there's the commandment proper, but then there's also a gift that's associated with it. So if you think about the gift that goes with the eighth commandment, let's say it's reputation. How important is your reputation? Why? Why is your reputation important? Wait. What'd you just say? It's who people think you are. Your reputation is not who you are. Your reputation is who people think you are. And if someone is damaging your reputation, what does that impact? What it does impact, it can impact your livelihood, the way you relate, right? So it's attacking those connections that we have with the people around us. And in some ways, it can be poisoning them, because if somebody hears your reputation, does your reputation get there before you do? Yeah. And if your reputation is negative, then people are going to be on their guard. They might maybe they don't want to have any dealings with you at all. So as we think about and I will, Cindy, I will get back to what you said there earlier, but as we consider God's gift of reputation, the eighth commandment is seeking to protect reputation. Now, one of the things somebody said this covers is gossip. It does. Gossip how would you define gossip? Rick, how would you define gossip? What's your first thought? Negative stories. How about anybody over here? What's bad things? Here's the way that I don't remember where I first heard this, but I think it's fair. Gossip is something about somebody else that may or may not be true, but you kind of want it to be. So those are the things, because those are the stories that get told. So if something is factually true, okay. What's that? But it is if it is seeking to tear down somebody else. Because, and here's the thing, and this is the thing that we struggle with. Well, if it's not false, well, then I'm not bearing false witness, but you are potentially harming somebody else's reputation. And as a follower of Christ, with God's commandments here, that we are called to protect the reputation of others, even if it's somebody we don't like, maybe even especially. Now, that said, does that mean that you say positive lies about somebody else? No. Well, okay, so you can say, one, it's not my story to tell. There's judging, right? You're setting yourself up in the place of judgment. Then don't. Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't say this. Don't. Right there, right? So, but that's good. So what we're called to do is Luther puts it here, put the best construction on everything. That is not to go out of your way to like make up some sort of fanciful scenario for something, but it's to understand that you don't know everything and the people around you don't know everything. And so if you think about it, well, this person cut me off on the road, like, well, they're obviously a jerk. Well, no. I mean, they might be. You don't know that. But what would the best construction be? Maybe a raccoon ran out in front of the street. You don't know. Or maybe they are rushing to get someplace, and they're, or just, maybe they're just having a bad day. You don't know. You're not going to be the one judging them. And if we kind of bring it back to the larger conversation with this thing of reputation, that we are called to safeguard the reputation of others. If somebody else is hearing gossip about you, what do you want them to do? Well, shut it down, right? And that's what we're called to do too. So like if you hear gossip, one, hey guys, this isn't our thing to talk about. We don't know what's going on in this person's life. And it's not right for us to be talking behind their back. There are many other beautiful things to talk about. Yes. It's the dirty laundry, right? Which, you know, watching these, just don't watch the news. Yeah, it's like, uh, it's, if there's plenty of other ways to like find out how things, but like news reports, those are products. Those are curated. They're designed and produced to engage, to anger, to make money. They sell ads for a reason. But so things like that. Okay, now, yeah. Okay. Because what does it say about you when you're slandering somebody else? Oh, so we're showing what's inside of us. We're doing it. Okay. Because when you're putting somebody else down, what are you trying to do? Make yourself better in some way, right? You feel better. Well, look at them. I'm not them. But there's truth in this, right? And this is part of the danger. This is why this false testimony, gossip, slander, all these things are so pernicious. They just it's really there's an attractive, an evil, attractive component to it. All right, we got to keep moving on here, but let's take a look. So if you go on page 29, we're going to take a look again, Large Catechism, Seventh Commandment, and then we'll talk to Cindy's question over there. Briefly, in summary, as in the former commandments, this is what is forbidden. A, to do our neighbor any injury or wrong in any conceivable manner by impeding, hindering, withholding his possessions and property, or even to consent to allow such injury. Instead, we should interfere and prevent it. B, it is commanded that we advance and improve his possessions. When they suffer lack, we should help, share, and lend both to friends and foes. Whoever now seeks and desires good works will find here more than enough to do that are heartily acceptable and pleasing to God. In addition, they are favored and crowned with excellent blessings. So we are to be richly compensated for all that we do for our neighbor's good and from friendship. King Solomon also teaches this in Proverbs 19. Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed. Here then you have a rich Lord. He is certainly enough for you. He will not allow you to come up short in anything or to lack. So, as we think about a little bit more with the eighth commandment, the seventh commandment, we're called not just to deprive others, but to protect our neighbors and their possessions. Now, with kind of the question about animal rights, if you know there's an animal being abused, are you the person? Because this goes back to the other commandments. Are you the person under authority to go and steal away the cat that's being abused? Hey, no. Wait, hang on. No, you're not. Who is? We'll get there. We'll get there. Who is the authority? Well, so in this case, like animal control or something like that, right? Let's say there is no animal control. Like, well, what do? Do you go to the owner? Right? This is the first, and that might be a difficult thing. But I can say, hey, I see for some reason your cat looks like a skeleton, and it's not one of those skeleton cats, whatever those are, right? But is everything okay? Because maybe what you find out is it's not just about the cat. Maybe there's something going on in the person's life too. And so we need to look at what's the larger picture. So, stealing, right? We need to be very careful that we're not depriving someone else of their possession. And child abuse, that's a whole nother level there too. But yeah, go to the authorities first. There you go. Yeah. And so there's the accountability kind of thing too. That's a challenge in a broken world. Yeah, Alexander. A res- what kind of rescue mission are we talking about? Uh-huh. Oh, like I was wondering if we're calling in Greenpeace here or something. But well, yeah, it can't. So I think there's the way that we always need to be careful that we are not taking it upon ourselves solely to be the arbiter of how things should be. And so if there's an absence in the system or the place that we are, well, look at what is the most reasonable connection to the actual authority and structure. Okay. So before we move off of the seventh commandment here, I want to reinforce this. It's not just about not taking; it's also about helping to protect our neighbors' possessions, their wealth, all those things, so that we are called to be agents to care for the good of the people around us. And the real quick example that I use, if anybody's seen Superman 3, you already know it. But so let's say Todd's my coworker here, right? And I come to Todd and I say, "Hey, Todd, I've got this. There's this thing. Our company makes so much money. There's all these rounding errors and stuff like that. So I figured out a way to just kind of have the rounding errors go to like a designated account. But I need your help to do it. Nobody's going to notice it because it's such a small amount in the regular transactions. So can you help me out with that?"
Of course, I like to steal.
Of course, I like to steal is Todd's answer. So I'm rescuing the fractions of a cent. They're going unloved. So what do you say in a situation like that? Well, it's like, hey man, that's not a good idea. That's not what we should be doing. We're not respecting our employers. We got good jobs. Why do we need more? So if they insist on it, it's like, all right, man, square. I'm moving on. I'm gonna see if I can do it myself. So if somebody is insisting on continuing to do something that's going to be harming your neighbor, your employer, whatever, what then do you do? First, go to the person and say, "Man, that's not good. Like, just don't do that. And if you keep up with this, I'm going to have to report you." What's that? Well, and there's what's visible, right? And that's the thing. How can we be thinking about, how can we be caring for, how can we be paying attention, not spying on your neighbor, but actually just being in contact with your neighbor so that you're not removed, and so that we can kind of see things in the world around us. Okay, so yes, so you actively work to protect your neighbor. Eighth commandment, similar stuff. Um, Now we have the sum and general understanding of this commandment. Let no one do any harm to his neighbor with the tongue, whether friend or foe, even if it's somebody you don't like, right? Do not speak evil of him, no matter whether it is true or false, unless it is done by commandment or for his reformation. Let everyone use his tongue and make it serve for the best of everyone else, to cover up his neighbor's sins and infirmities, excuse them, conceal, and garnish them with his own reputation. The chief reason for this should be the one that Christ declares in the gospel, where he includes all commandments about our neighbor. Whatever you wish that others would do to you, do also to them. And how do you guys feel about that? Well, that's that part of Matthew, yeah. Golden, we say the golden rule, but like this whole thing about not saying harmful things or malicious things, harm any of those things about your neighbor, even if it's a foe. If we were in the South, what would we say? Bless their heart. if you, I would say even then, if you can't say something nice, but other people are saying not good. Oh, what's this? That's cool. I have no what's going on there. This okay. A true revolution. I have no idea what's going on back there. Anyway, well, this is going with the live stream too. So, Jeff, would you mind poking your head in there and just see if I need to get a new computer? I know I need to get a new soundboard. So anyway, I guess so. This is the first time for everything. Okay, so eighth commandment. Thinking about the reality of a world where people say all kinds of things about each other without without giving it a second thought. How does this reflect on our day-to-day living? Something to care away from this. Yeah. So rather than feeling good about yourself by putting others down, you can feel good or feel like the way that you should by not engaging in that harmful talk. Okay, that's certainly because if you're imagining yourself in the similar situation, you don't want other people to be talking negatively about you. How do you defend somebody's reputation? Let's say it's a friend of yours. How do you defend somebody's reputation? Shut down rumors, shut down gossip. Okay. Talk well of them. It's like, hey, Todd's not a bad guy, right? He cares. So you're actually in the act of putting the best construction. You're helping maybe shift people's framework or their misperception of things because maybe they have false information. So not just shutting it down, but seeking to provide a corrective. Does that mean you're Todd's hype man? No, but even if you're not his friend as your fellow Christian, even if he was your enemy, right? You do what you can to root out the bad stuff. Okay, yeah. So even if so we're talking about that it's not necessarily something people are saying something that's not necessarily untrue. We say, yeah, no, I can't imagine their circumstances. I can't imagine having to make those choices. The phrase there, but for the grace of God go I, right? Is that, well, that Jesus says that, right? That he was without sin. And so I think that's something that we would do well to remember, that we are not without sin. And we need to be mindful of that, how much we need. Glass houses, yeah. Okay, let's keep going for 9th and 10th commandments there. Therefore, we allow these commandments to remain in their ordinary meaning. It is commanded first that we do not desire our neighbor's harm or even assist or give opportunity for it, but we must gladly wish and leave him what he has. Also, we must advance and preserve for him what may be for his profit and service, just as we wish to be treated. So these commandments are especially directed against envy and miserable greed. God wants to remove all causes and sources from which arise everything by which we may harm our neighbor. Therefore, he expresses it in plain words, you shall not covet, and so on. For especially he wants us to have a pure heart, although we will never attain to that as long as we live here. Okay, so 7th, 8th, or 9th and 10th commandments here. As we're talking about coveting, what does coveting mean? Right, that's not a word that we use all that often. If you have to define it, desire, want, I think that falls short. I mean, it's on the right path. I think that's more of it. If you're combining them, right? So coveting something is desiring it, wanting it, obsessing on it to an inordinate amount, right? To a too high of a degree. And I use that word inordinate specifically because it's out of order. Things are out of order. If you're coveting something, things are out of order, you're putting it up on a pedestal. It is becoming something which is, let's say, an idol, which goes against, we've already gone through those commandments, right? So as we go through the ninth and 10th commandments, we see that the sins that are coming, or spoken to there, those are sins which are ultimately breaking other commandments too. We know breaking any commandment is also breaking the first commandment, but when you're breaking the ninth and 10th commandments, when you're coveting something, whether it is a thing, whether it is a employee, somebody else's employee, or whatever, it kind of, it cascades. There's dominoes, right? So coveting, wanting something isn't bad. Wanting it inordinately, coveting it, is bad, especially when you're trying to take it away from somebody else, because this is again about our relationships with our neighbors and the people around us. So how do we go through life where, oh, you've got something I want, and you, let's say you give them a sweetheart deal on it, when you know that postage stamp, oh, I'll give you $10 for that old postage stamp. Well, you know it's worth $1,000. Is that going against the seventh commandment? Yeah, it's still, you're depriving of them. So you could say, hey, I don't know if you know it, this is worth a lot of money. I'll give you a deal on it, and yeah, maybe you still aren't paying necessarily what you think you can resell it for, but you're not trying to trick them. You're not trying to deceive them. Okay, that's all fine and good. But before we wrap up, I want to make sure we hit the gift with these commandments too. So if we say that in the ninth and 10th commandments, the problem is coveting, wanting something inordinately, well, what's the gift that God speaks to in these commandments? It's another word that we don't use very much in our society: contentment. What's content, Bob? What's contentment? How would you define contentment? Being happy with what you've got, satisfied with what you've got. And I would add, those are great. So being happy with what you got, being satisfied with what you got, and I would add this to it as well: using what you've got. So that it's not just the having, but it's also the using, enjoying what you've got. So that God has given us all these things. So rather than us chasing after the next thing or the other thing or what somebody else has, thing or person, we enjoy what we have. We enjoy the relationships we have. We enjoy the possessions that God has blessed us with, the experiences that God has, rather than disregarding them. And so, in doing so, we not only celebrate. Actually, well, look at that. They have it down there in question number 70, down with the contentment word. That we are content with the blessings that God gives us, and ourselves. Any other questions or things before we wrap up today? Yeah, Jeff. Yes. So it's I think it's conceptually is how those go together. In the Reformed churches, actually, they number the commandments differently too. So we go with the Lutherans number it with the Roman Catholic, Orthodox, kind of, and ancient church. Reformed numbers it slightly differently, where they take the first commandment and split out no graven images as the second commandment, and then they combine the ninth and the 10th into just the 10th commandment. So we still have 10 commandments, but so if you're talking to somebody about the fifth commandment, you're like, I don't think that means what you think it means. It's probably because they've just got a different numbering going on. But yeah, so it's in terms of the content, treating them together that way. Yeah. Correct. Correct. It's when you want the donkey too much. What means do you use to get the donkey? Because then that might go into the stealing, or maybe even murdering. Like, that guy's got the best donkey. He's never going to let me have it while he lives. But if I can get into his will and this becomes a bad plot to a mystery or something. But yeah, so yeah, that's things for us to consider. So wanting something is not bad. It's if we allow ourselves to be carried away, and how we want it, to what degree. Okay. All right. Thank you all. We will continue on as we move into our next segment of the Catechisms next week.